Thank you, Greg. Hours after appearing in Vatican City's St. Peter's Square to bless thousands on Easter Sunday at about 7:35 this morning, 88-year-old Pope Francis passed away. Francis was born and raised in Argentina before leading the Roman Catholic Church since March of 2013. In recent months, he spent 38 days in Rome's Gemelli Hospital, where he was treated for a respiratory crisis that developed into double pneumonia. Vice President J.D. Vance met with Pope Francis on Easter Sunday at the Casa Santa Marta.
Pray for you every day.
Sara,
bless you.
Io prego per lei ogni giorno, che Dio la benedica. Grazie tanto.
Happy Easter.
This morning on Truth Social, President Trump posted, quote, "Rest in peace, Pope Francis. May God bless him and all who loved him." This afternoon on Victory News, we will report on possible successors to Pope Francis. U.S. and Iranian officials said progress was made Saturday in the second round of discussions aimed at limiting Tehran's nuclear weapons program. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff for the Middle East and Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and an Oman delegation met at the Omani embassy in Rome. According to the Washington Times, both sides indicated good progress was made during the direct and indirect discussions. The Iranian Foreign Minister reportedly posted on social media afterward, "Relatively positive atmosphere in Rome has enabled progress on principles and objectives of a possible deal." The U.S. and Iran have not had formal diplomatic relations since 1980, right after Iran's Islamic Revolution. President Trump has threatened military action to prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. Over 80 protests against President Donald Trump's government reform and executive actions were held at capitals, courthouses, and city halls across the U.S. Saturday.
Trump must go now! Trump must go now! Trump must go now!
We're here today to say, in the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. The Trump fascist regime must go, and we're here to demand that Guillermo Abrego Garcia be released.
The 50-51 rally is short for 50 protests, 50 states. One movement were condemning a so-called Trump's executive overreach, including deportations without due process, dismantling federal agencies, and threats to higher education. The organization's social media claimed 5 million people took part in Saturday's protests. Saturday, Mike.
Former President Donald Trump delivered a series of messages this Easter weekend, first on Good Friday.
He is risen. Through the pain and sacrifice of Jesus on the cross, we saw God's boundless love and devotion to all humanity. And in that moment of his resurrection, history was forever changed with the promise of everlasting life.
Then early on Resurrection Sunday, Trump took to Truth Social on behalf of himself and First Lady Melania, saying in part, "May this day be full of peace and joy for all who celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. He is risen." A lengthier post shortly after included a happy Easter to, in his words, Trump's words, that is, the radical left lunatics who are fighting and scheming so hard to bring murderers, drug lords, dangerous prisoners, the mentally insane and well-known MS-13 gang members and wife beaters back into our country, end quote. Last week, Victory News contributor Lieutenant Colonel Alan West shared some special insight into the celebration.
April the 19th of 1775, that was the day that the American Patriots took the field of Lexington Green in Massachusetts, and it was the shot that was fired heard around the world, and it started the American Revolution. And of course, this weekend is also the Resurrection Weekend, Easter weekend. And so when you think about 2 Corinthians 3:17, now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. I can't think of a better weekend where these two things can coincide. Our victory over, spiritual bondage and our victory over the tyrannical bondage of the British at the time.
So if we look at this, which is not a coincidence, we know there is no such thing in the spirit. We look at it prophetically. What would you say we should be prophesying in prayer and declaring over our nation this weekend?
I think we should be prophesying and praying over a greater increase of spiritual faith in this nation, so that will encourage us to be more courageous and stand against the principalities and the evils that we face that are real, seen, and unseen, if I can put it in those terms.
To hear more from Colonel West, you can listen to his Steadfast and Loyal podcast and join us in prayer for greater faith in Christ's victory. Fior.
Mike, a big shakeup appears to be underway at the Pentagon after reported intel leaks with the next to go possibly being Joe Casper, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's chief of staff. Last week, senior advisor Dan Caldwell, Hegseth, Deputy Chief of Staff Darren Selnick, and Deputy Defense Secretary Stephen Feinberg's Chief of Staff Colin Carroll were placed on administrative leave while the probe into the intel leaks unfolded. On Friday, they were let go. A joint statement from the dismissed advisors reads in part, quote, "We are incredibly disappointed by the manner in which our service at the Department of Defense ended. Unnamed Pentagon officials have slandered our character with baseless attacks on our way out the door." One defense official told Politico that Casper had conflicts with the three dismissed advisors, and Casper was the one who called for the investigation back in March. All three who were dismissed made it clear of their support for the Trump-Vance administration. President Trump ended last week stating career government employees who work for the administration on policy will be reclassified as, quote, scheduled policy career or at-will employees. That means they can be fired if they fail to adhere to the Trump agenda. On Friday, President Trump wrote on Truth Social, moving forward, career government employees working on policy matters will be classified as scheduled policy career and will be held to the highest standards of conduct and performance. The administration's Office of Personnel Management estimates the change could impact around 50,000 employees. The White House said in a February memo, the reclassification to at-will employees removes access to cumbersome adverse action procedures or appeals, overturning Biden administration regulations that protected poor-performing employees. Trump added in his post, if these government workers refuse to advance the policy interests of the president or are engaging in corrupt behavior, they should no longer have a job. Trump concluded, quote, "We must root out corruption and implement accountability in our federal workforce." Greg?